jet diver and my my imitation sand shrimp, albeit rubber crawdad. Okay. Jet diver is another way to do it on a dropper, and sand shrimp is actually a very good choice as far as bait for steelhead. They love them. You can drift fish them. Typically when I fish sand shrimp, for whatever reason, I have the most success fishing them with a, what do you call that thing? Thank you. One of those moments. Spin and glow. And for whatever reason, that egg pattern mylar wing in water with 4 to 6 feet of visibility, clear down to gin clear water, I stick with an egg pattern, orange, with mylar wings, and I'm basically rigging that on a dual hook setup. Again, stinger hook out front, size 2 or 4. Put the main size 1 hook through the body of the sand shrimp, and then I am just going to give a couple of half hitches around the tail. And I didn't want to bother with sand shrimp out of the cooler today, so I just grabbed this crawdad to simulate. But your line will basically come off the top of your sand shrimp, and then you have to put 2 or 3 beads on there to stay out of the way of the sand shrimp to make sure your spin glow is spinning. And then this is going to present downriver towards the fish. Now, more times than not, I'll use a jet diver when presenting sand shrimp for a couple of reasons. One thing about the coon shrimp, believe it or not, trout and smolt really don't touch them. You don't waste a lot of bait with coon shrimp with the smaller fish pecking away at them. Sand shrimp, on the other hand, trout and smolt and everything else love sand shrimp. With a Brad's diver, the tip of your rod is constantly doing this. It's constantly fluttering and moving. With a jet diver, tip of your rod is just kind of doing this. So if you're in an area that's getting picked apart by small fish, trout, smolt, or whatever, and you're using that Brad diver, you may not see all those bites that's destroying your bait. And then you think you're fishing, but you're not fishing. When I switch to a jet diver and I have a real nice slow cadence bend in the rod, and those little fish are pecking at it, and it gets rattled, I'm like, okay, check the bait, bring it in, sand shrimp's gone. If I was fishing the Brad's diver, I might not know that. You follow me? The other thing about this that's real nice is they're designed, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, they're designed with fins to capture resistance of current, and they're also designed with a floating chamber. And the reason for that is this is going down river basically like this, okay? And it's bouncing on the rocks. The fins are down. Typically it lines at a 45 as it's dragging through. But if that gets hung up, it stops moving down river. All you have to do is pull back on it a little bit and then release slack into it, and that floating chamber allows that to come right off the bottom. That's why they designed it that way. So it works really well in that it seldom gets hung up. The Brad's divers can get hung up because they just keep digging. They just keep digging, digging, digging. These are nice because it's a nice, relaxed presentation. And when they do get hung up, and if you pull a little tension, again, you release it, and then the chamber floats it up, and then you're right back to fishing. You don't even have to reel it in or check it or anything, okay? I typically rig those on a slider. Just when those fish do grab it, I like them to have the freedom of pulling line as the rod doubles over. And then, again, anytime you're presenting something out of a rod holder, as it loads up, it's not about the, you know, dun, 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 dun. You got to wait till that rod tip is almost kissing the water. So do yourself a favor, get some rod holders on your boat that friends and family and folks that you take fishing have a really hard time getting the rod out of. You're going to land more fish. That's a true story. That is a true story. Matter of fact, when they're not looking, click the little lock on there, and then once the fish is burying that rod, you're like, oh, hey, move, Chuck, and then you flip the little deal and, okay, now get it out of there. So anyway, that's my preferred method on sand shrimp, just because I want to decide whether or not is it the diver creating all that rod tip action, or is it actually small fish picking apart my bait, okay? Again, I don't have that issue with coon shrimp, so I typically run that just on a Brad's diver. Let's see. Any plug fishermen in here? People like to run plugs? Want to be? Favorite plug? Anybody?
Dr. Depp.
Dr. Depp, Wonder Bit. Oh my God. Yeah, I need an assistant. All right. Okay. If you are new to plug fishing, do yourself a favor, go buy yourself some mag lips. There's a lot of very good plugs out there on the market, but when it comes to it, at the end of the day, the mag lip has the widest range of accuracy. In other words, they put a lot of research and time into development of this plug that you take it out of the box, hook it onto your rod, it's going to fish. Okay? Other plugs, not so much. Sometimes you pull them out, they get in the water, they kind of go sideways. You got to tune them a little bit. You got to make an adjustment here and there. And mag lips, 99% of the time you take them out of the carton, hook them on, put them in the water, they're going to run. They have an erratic skip beat action that really entices fish. The other thing they have as far as widest range of running is when you have your boat going down the seam and you have fast current on your right rod, slower current on your left rod, if you're running quick fish, you might have to alter the sizes of fish that you're running. But with mag lips, if you're running 3.5s or 4.0s, you can put the same exact plug out in both speeds of water, and they're both going to perform just fine. So they have a wide spectrum of types of water that they can run in. So, and they have so many great colors now in the metallics and stuff for gin clear water work fantastic. So this one kind of dried out on me. Basically, I like to take. Somebody eat that? Oh, this is the tail meat out of the coon shrimp. So the coon shrimp is mostly shell, head, where they carry their eggs, legs, carapace, that whole thing. When it comes down to like, you want to put that on a salad, it's going to take you a while to get a bunch of them pink shrimp and break them down. And this is what you get. This is a great little morsel that's been soaking in your cure for however long. It smells every bit as much as the entire coon shrimp smells. And if you want to add some scent to your plug with some magic thread and a little piece of meat on there, flatten it out, multi-wrap that thing on there, it doesn't hinder the action or the ability of the plug to perform. It adds some really great scent moving down river. Again, steelhead are more visually stimulated, but scent doesn't hurt. If you want to put scent on plugs, wiping greasy oil and stuff on there is okay. You can also simply add a little piece of meat on there. That's not going to hinder the action of the plug. The other thing you can do, anybody use sponges on their plug? Nobody uses sponges on it? Joey Princeton uses sponges. You take sponge, you cut it to the form of your plug. You actually even cut the little legs to fit over the center eye or your hook, okay? I prefer to do it when they're dry and really clamp them down, and I have that sponge on there. And then before you add scent to this, you want to throw it in the water, let the sponge wake up and absorb, squeeze the water out of it, take one of your oil scents and put it on that sponge. So effectively you're adding scent to your plug, but you don't have to constantly keep reapplying. You have something on there that's going to hold that scent. Again, something that thin. One key is on the front edge of this. You really want to wrap the front edge of that sponge, because when it swells up, if you got a big lip curl back on that, that could inhibit the plug's natural action, right? So make sure you anchor down the front edge really well, but if you cut them in the shape of the plug, it doesn't hang out the sides, doesn't swell up on the front, that plug will run as true as it's supposed to, and it has a real nice scent trail coming off of it. Again, sand shrimps, krill, shrimp anise, squid, any of those that have trigger steelhead. It's just a great way to add scent to your plug and not have to keep reapplying it. So sponges work great if you don't want to tie a little piece of prawn or something like that, okay? Basically, that's the little spawn bags I make. Again, the Pautzke's trout eggs. I use multiple colors, oranges and reds, and usually a natural color. Mix them in there for contrast. If you guys haven't tried that and you're thinking maybe I should invest in that, it's a small investment for a durable bait that lasts a long time. You would spend a whole lot more if you're trying to buy eggs to cure, for example. So very worth your time. Something that you can create. You go out and catch a couple steelhead, you can thank me later. All right? That's about it. I think I covered all 8 of the rods. Questions?
Why do you change the treble out on the plug single?
Good question. He asked, why do I change the trebles off of the plugs to a single? I like to take the treble off. I leave the snap ring on there. I put a barrel swivel, and then I crimp my siwash type hook onto that barrel swivel, because that is 360 degrees no matter what that fish is doing. I do it for coho, chinook, and my Steelhead plugs. That thing can spin around, those fish can flop around, it's not going to just torque and rip that treble hook out of there. And sometimes I will simply hang a single hook off the back, but more times than not, I'm putting a dual hook on there. And it works well, and I just have more confidence in that. So good question. Yep.
How much mono are you running on your plug rod?
About 6 feet. And I just use a uni knot. I don't use a swivel because I don't want to be maxed out on how close I can get the fish to the boat, or have any net issues with that thing being way out there. But I'll run 40, 50-pound braid. And for running plugs, especially as you get later in the season and I stop fishing bait exclusively because we're going after big wild fish, I will put 20, 25-pound, 30-pound mono on here. Yeah, because typically when you're going after big steelhead and they're in close to wood and things like that, you don't want to give up your plug on a big nasty fish. Plus you want to land the big nasty fish. So, beef up. They're not seeing that line, are they? First thing that they see is what? That plug backing right in their face, and you're just backing them down the hole, right? So let me touch on rods real quick and reels for plug fishing. So I typically use a 7.5 foot one piece. These are the 6 to 15. I have 8 to 20s as well if I think they need to beef up. I believe in line counters. If you can't afford or don't have line counters, you need to mark your line. The problem with that is as you start cutting back on your line because of breaks and things like that, you have to alter your color or change your mark or something. The key there is that when you put out 2 or 3 rods, we call that the wall of resistance. And so I want those plugs kind of equally dispersed out in front of my boat, albeit 30, 40, 50 feet out in front. As I'm moving across the water and working my way down, I'm taking those plugs and I'm basically backing those fish up. And you're going to back them up till they get to a point of fight or flight. And they're either going to come after one of your plugs or they're going to try to get around it. If you have this plug on the inside of the seam set at 20 feet and this one maybe at 30 and this one at 40, those are approaching that fish at an angle that they don't necessarily have this pressure of wall coming right at them, so they have like an escape route. They can try to figure out how to get around those. So I like to make sure the distance of the presentation out in front of the boat is all equal. So I rely on my line counters to do that. So, any other questions? Yep.
Rod position when you're pulling plugs, do you like them more out or more straight towards them?
Rod position when pulling plugs. It depends if I'm running 2 or 3. Typically, if my drift boat orientation is here, my side rods are not like way outside. They're maybe 45, 30 degrees, nice and tight. The water you're covering is not that wide. If you think about wintertime, flows, size of rivers you're fishing, if you got a big wide path, then maybe widen them out a little bit, but a lot of the water I'm fishing is a little more narrow, and I'm not afraid if I got enough people, I'm running that bow rod as well, right down the middle. And all hell breaks loose if a fish grabs that middle rod because the other 2 don't come out of the water fast enough. And then, things get all cattywampus and tangled up. But it's part of the fun, so. That answer it? Yeah. Anything else? Anyone? One more.
Fluorocarbon, do you ever use that or just like an ultra green?
Fluorocarbon I will use on occasion, jig fishing, in gin clear, low water. The thing about fluorocarbon is it sinks faster than monofilament, right?
It's expensive.
And it's expensive. It has a time and a place. I don't use it for plug rods. There's no reason for it. I don't use it as a top shot on any of my presentations, again, because it sinks much more rapidly than your regular monofilament. And if you're bobber dogging and you have 20 feet of fluorocarbon as your top shot, and your float is set at 10 feet, well, you got 10 feet of fluorocarbon that's between your float and your braid that wants to just kind of sink down, and it just really makes it hard to mend your line when you're float fishing, so I don't recommend using it. I would venture to say I use it for kokanee gear, and I use it for fishing jigs under floats in extreme clear conditions. One line that I do like is by P-Line, and it's a Fluoro Clear. It's a fluorocarbon coating over a monofilament, which is, to me, the best of both worlds. It's got great tensile strength. I will use that as a top shot because it doesn't behave any differently in the water than your standard mono. And that, for years, I've used that line and had great success. That Fluoro Clear is a really good choice as a top shot and as a leader. It works well. So, Anything else? Yep.
If you're bass fishing, what do you recommend for
Top three what?
approaches?
Approaches. I give you top one for covering water. The rate of success in the different presentations you can go with, I would go bobber dogging or flow drifting. New water, covering water, and if you're new to fishing, bobber dogging or float drifting, one and the same, is going to be an asset to you in learning how to fish water, understanding what your float presentation is doing, how to gauge depth of water, how to cover water, how to extend your drift, how to thoroughly fish water and make sure you're not missing fish. And the nice thing is with bobber dogging, anything you can drift fish. Anything you're willing to drag drift fishing, you can use for bobber dogging. So you use bait, you can use floating jigs, you can use beads, you can use worms. Don't disregard night crawlers, by the way, talking about bait. So, anything else? Kind of long here. JP's chomping at the bit to wow you guys with worms. Yeah.
Did you say you can bobber dog jigs? They don't get hung up on the bottom?
Floating jigs. Floating jigs. There's some different types of jigs that have a foam head that aren't a weighted jig, so don't try to bobber dog a weighted jig because that will get thrown up. Yeah. So, all right, we good? Check out Fish Hunt Northwest. Go to my Facebook page. Check out what we got going on and join us every Thursday, 7 p.m. Please. Love to see you there. Thank you.